Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 215. In this show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. So let's get started talking about number 18, which honestly I didn't read any bad books this week, but this was kind of just a lower tier book, and that is Detective Comics issue 968. You know, I think with this one, you really realize we know the motive of Tim Drake, but do we like the motive of future Tim Drake? And here, I don't know. I don't know if I'm really rooting for him as even a villain. Obviously, he's supposed to be a villain, but it's even though he has the motive of, oh, you know, Batwoman did this, it's just I needed more. I needed more feeling into this, and I feel like that's what's lacking in the dialogue completely in this issue, is just that, emotional connection, sadly. So Detective Comics issue 968 for me gets 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 17, which is X-Men Gold issue 15. You know, another book that I definitely did not want to see this low, but I feel like a lot of it was filler up until we get to the end of, you know, finally the X-Men seeing what Mojo's been up to and trying to make the X-Men relive their past, which obviously is an interesting concept, but this is definitely a filler prelude slash penultimate issue before we get to the finale, which is disappointing because I usually like the gold narrative more than the blue narrative because the gold team is more my X-Men. So I was a bit disappointed. Even the art kind of feels phoned in. I think that's really the best word. This whole issue just kind of feels phoned in for the penultimate issue. So X-Men Gold issue 15 gets 3 stars. There are still some interesting character moments in the, oh, actually, sorry, 2.5 stars. There are some character moments I did like in the issue, though. Alright, moving on to number 16, which is Superwoman issue 16. So this issue, once again, I think there's some interesting character moments here. We get to see Lana and Lois interacting with each other. You get to see Natasha and her girlfriend having a cool moment. But the villain is not doing for me. Lena with this big robot head, I felt very underwhelmed in the issue, especially because this is the final arc of Superwoman. So just kind of lets you down for the series, where it just feels like they've given up because this series is ending. So Superwoman issue 16 does get 3 stars. Artwork is pretty solid. Again, there are good character moments, but the overall plot definitely could be a bit stronger. Moving on to number 15, which is Birthright, issue 28, which is an Image Comics book, which I've been reading from the beginning. And when Birthright is good, it's really good, and when it's slow, it's really slow. And here, it's really slow, where we get small inches of what's going on in Mikey's head, and this assassin crew finally being revealed, and then a train blows up, and obviously the action's gonna start up in the next issue. So bit of a slow burn, you know, but you kind of expect it with this series. So overall, I gave this one 3 stars, and that was number 15. Moving on to number 14. Glad to see this book a bit higher. Still not, you know, top 5 level, but it's a bit higher, and that is Supergirl issue 15. I feel like this book gave a little bit more personality to Supergirl. They start over her narrative a bit. Yes, it's very repetitive. It's stuff we know about the character already and in this version of the character, but it's nice, again, to kind of get some personality from her. The DEO stuff, I'm still not really enjoying, or the Cat Grant stuff. I feel like they're really pushing to be like the show, but not like the show, and it's kind of weird. But I did like the family moments in this issue, and just Kara's voice. I feel like the book is still missing soul, but it has a bit more personality compared to what we've been getting with Supergirl. So I gave this 3 stars because we are getting a little bit of an improvement with the book. I think the artwork is better, even if the coloring is still a little damp for the book. Now moving on to number 13, which is Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, issue 16, which is a lot of fun just to see all these female characters in the DC universe, especially the Batman side of the DC universe, coming together to try to help the men who are all sick. You know, the actual storyline isn't great. It's, you know, I feel a little predictable for all women's comic book is like, oh, we have to save all the men. And I didn't really love the villains and the reasoning of why they were doing it, but it's still cool to see all these characters teaming up, and the creative team does try to give a voice to all the characters, so if you have a favorite, their personality does show, even though I think in some scenes it kind of feels forced that they have to talk in that panel. But overall, I gave it 3 stars. I think it was a cool idea. Don't know if it was fully executed correctly, but it's still cool to see all these characters together. So Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, issue 16, gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 12, which I was disappointed to see this so low, and that is She-Hulk, issue 159. So I'm a bit torn on this because I did like Jen's voice here, and I think Mariko Tamaki continues to do a good job at creating Jen's voice, but I feel like this issue is trying to be old She-Hulk, but also forgets what Hulk provided with the PTSD story, which I thought Tamaki did a very good job with. Now, with this issue, you don't have that, but you also don't really have the fun of Jen Walters either. It's just kind of stuck, I feel. There's just not a lot of substance here. Now, if you're a fan of the leader, I think you'll enjoy that because you do get him as a villain, but you also get a villain that's connected to him who's a bit lackluster as the super fan of She-Hulk and totally obsessed with her. So overall, I gave this 3 stars. Again, I'm kind of torn on it. I do like the Hulk series a bit more so far, but hopefully this book finds its fitting as it goes along. So She-Hulk issue 159 gets 3 stars. Now moving on to number 11, which is, get a drink of water first. Alright, number 11 is Hack and Slash Verse, I think it's Verse, yes, Verse Vampirella issue 2, which is just a fun book. If you enjoy both these characters, pick it up. You know, the actual storyline is kind of generic. It's them trying to hunt this demon, but the dialogue between them is a lot of fun. Artwork is solid, so if you're just looking for a fun, kind of mindless read, pick up Hack and Slash Verse Vampirella issue 2, which I gave 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 10, I was very disappointed to see this in the middle and not the top, and that is The Normals issue 6. So, I love The Normals. This is the end of, I guess, the first volume, but it is a miniseries. We don't know if we're getting another miniseries, but the way it ends, it feels like there's a lot of doors open, and unless we were saying, hey, volume 2 coming 3 months from now, I'd be totally okay with this issue, but we don't know if we actually will get a volume 2 or if they're just leaving us on a cliffhanger. And a lot of the issues are main character trying to figure out, do I stay with my family and how do I protect my family? Is it staying with them or not? And actually, the narrative doesn't have a lot of the family here. Obviously, it has a lot of the family issues, but all the other issues have done a really good job at making every family member kind of have a storyline. And it's disappointing that the last issue doesn't do so. It's very much in the mind of our main character, the father. So, The Normals for me, if this was a regular issue, I definitely would have given it higher. There's definitely some interesting things explored in this issue, but as a final issue to a miniseries, it's kind of unsatisfying, especially if we don't get a volume 2. So The Normals issue 6 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 9, which is Wonder Woman issue 34. Now, I'm happy to see this so high because I haven't been liking this current volume of Wonder Woman, but I enjoyed this issue. Even if the dialogue's a bit heavy, we get to see Jason and Wonder Woman interacting with each other, and you're like seeing this sibling bonding, and then right away Jason is evil and is actually teaming up with Grail, which I thought was a nice twist. Not saying that you didn't see it coming, but it was a nice twist, and them actually fighting each other was pretty cool, especially after the heart-to-heart that Diana and Jason do have in this issue. And the artwork is pretty strong in this too. So Wonder Woman issue 34 for me gets 3.5 stars, and hopefully it stays on this track. Moving on to number 8, which is Miss Marvel issue 24. I'm a bit disappointed. It's kind of in the middle, not in my top 5, but this issue is not filler, but stuff that's been told already in Miss Marvel, which is, you know, she's not satisfied with being Miss Marvel. She doesn't really feel like people care for Miss Marvel anymore, and now she wants to take a break. But I do like the parallel of this runaway train kind of being Miss Marvel's life and an analogy for Miss Marvel's life, which I think G. Willow Wilson does a good job at, and the inner monologue is still very entertaining for the book. So yes, it's stuff we've seen, but it's still a worthwhile issue leading into Marvel Legacy. So Miss Marvel issue 24 gets 3.5 stars. Now moving on to number 7, which is Mr. Miracle, issue 4, which has been a fun series overall. You know, I think depends how hardcore you are for the dark side of DC Comics. If you love this family, love these characters, I think you're going to love this book. For me, I've never really been interested in these characters, and I don't know much about their history, so reading it is not as new reader friendly as I want it to be. But still a really cool read. I mean, I love Barda and Scott's interaction with each other. I do like their relationship. And kind of these weird things that are put into this issue, like them getting a veggie plate and them talking about life and death as they're eating carrots, you know? I feel like those small moments is kind of what makes this book so unique, and the artwork is gorgeous, and also trying to get the truth from an unreliable narrator like Mr. Miracle is a very interesting concept. So Mr. Miracle issue 4 gets a solid 4 stars for me, and again, I think it depends how much of your fandom is for Mr. Miracle and everything attached to him. But still, obviously a great book. Now moving on to number 6, which is Action Comics issue 991, which I thought was a solid ending to the Mr. Oz storyline. I like the interaction between Jor-El and Clark, and also seeing that Jor-El is a villain, but he's not. You know, I've continuously said this. I like that he's not just a mustache-twirling villain. You actually see his side and why he's doing the things he's doing and why Clark wouldn't trust him. But then you have John trusting him, which is an interesting dynamic. Now, some of the information that's revealed here has been revealed in other issues, like the whole Doomsday thing, but you get a little bit more information from it. Now, also, I feel like it is a little bit repetitive of, oh, you know, do I trust him or do I not trust him? Again, it's an interesting concept, but is it hitting over your head and at this point into the story, because we've had so many chapters? A little bit, but still thought it was a solid issue. The ending, a bit predictable, but it gives Clark a path to go on, trying to unravel the DC Rebirth mystery. So Action Comics issue 991 gets 4 stars. Now moving on to number 5. Number 5 is Batman Lost issue 1. Now I'm glad to see these one-shots getting a little higher on my list, and this one definitely being one of my favorites, because just like the title, the reader is kind of lost with Batman, and not in a bad way. It's just the way the narrative is structured, where you're kind of on the journey of like, wait, that didn't happen, you know? And it's just kind of a cool structure of making you feel like you're on the ride with Batman, where he's lost and not knowing what's going on in his narrative as you are learning more about this world too, and seeing, is Batman darker than he even expects, which is an interesting concept. And I do love the opening and the way the narration is structured throughout the whole issue is Batman talking to his granddaughter, then finding out maybe this isn't his granddaughter. So I like those moments. Artwork is very consistent throughout the issue, even though there are multiple artists on this book. So overall, I gave this 4 stars. Definitely gets me a bit more intrigued into Metal, which is important with these one-shots, and I haven't totally gotten with the other one-shots. Now moving on to number 4, which is The Archies, issue 2, which is just a fun issue. If you like music, you like Archie and his crew, read this issue. It's just total fun, where we get to see Veronica and the gang stuck in New Jersey and just really not having a lot of luck. Their gig is not exactly what they expected it to be. They have nowhere to stay, and they're just trying to live, really, and also build their career. So I feel like this was a really fun issue. You get some name drops of actual musicians, and it looks like the guest starringness is going to start by this issue and next issue, and as we continue into the series, where we get to see Archie World connect to our world with music. So Archie's issue 2 gets 4 stars, and if you like music, you like Archie, pick this one up. So moving on with number 3, which is Titans issue 17, which honestly I think this is one of the better issues I've read of Titans in a while, especially because of the artwork change. I think it's a lot cleaner and really showing some nice facial expressions, especially for an issue that's so emotional. Where we get to see Donna meet her future self, and yes, it's a bit exposition heavy. The whole issue is really this Donna explaining why she's evil, but it's also our Donna trying to fight it, to say, hey, I am human, and that's okay, I want to be human. But you also see things are changing, so maybe this is not a set-in-stone future, because Wally is dead at this point, but it looks like because the other Wally's there, that our Wally, this Wally will come back to life, and maybe that will change the narration of Donna's evilness. So, it's a fun issue if you're a Donna Troy fan. I think you'll love it. I am a Donna Troy fan, and I really enjoyed it. So, Titans issue 17 gets a solid 4 stars. Now, moving on to number 2. And number 2 is Jessica Jones, issue 14. And this issue is just kind of creepy because you get to see Jessica's daughter, Danny, being possessed by Purple Man. I was going to say Paper Man. By Purple Man. And it's such a heartbreaking issue. And you don't know what Jessica's going to do. And she even says that, like, what do I do? Do I grab her? Do I not? And it's just this kind of moral ambiguity with the issue that makes Purple Man such an interesting villain, and she even says that in the issue, why he's such a devastating person. So, really interesting stuff here, and I also like seeing the supporting cast of Carol and Luke and Danny helping Jessica, and that's the difference of this arc compared to the original Purple Man arc where she was alone and she pushed everyone away, and now Jessica's not pushing people away. So there's a lot of great moments here, and I think it shows when Brian Michael Bendis is at his best using character moments and those kind of long-winded dialogue moments that are really good. So Jessica Jones issue 14 gets 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, my obvious pick of the week this week. And that is Runaways, issue 3. Of course I'm going to pick Runaways. Carolina is one of my favorite characters of all time, and I think Rainbow Rowell and Chris Anka just did a great job of making her return. And, I go more in depth for this in my in-depth review on my channel, but what I like about it is showing that these characters have grown up, and Carolina doesn't want to leave college, and Nico understands that, and I love that conversation between Nico and Carolina, that awkward conversation where you see that Nico might be jealous of Carolina's life, where she picks up the picture of Julie and Carolina together, and just looking around the room and saying, hey, she found it. She found this normal, happy life. Also love that Julie and Carolina are still together, and there's a reference to it, so hopefully get to see more of that. And also Gert was really interesting in this issue, because she's starting to realize she lost these years, and people have changed, and her family has changed, and is her family still a family? And I love that moment between her and Chase where she's like, can this relationship even work anymore? You're 2 years older, and you're a grown man that ain't my boyfriend. And of course it's sarcastic Gert saying that, but it's all these emotions coming out and say, well, what do I do now? I lost all these years, and look where you guys are at now. So, really interesting issue, a lot of great emotions. As the plot is thickening here, we get to see that someone's watching through Victor's head, and, still with Molly's, it looks like with Molly's connection to this villain, maybe, we're going to get more information with the next issue, because it is Molly's issue. So, great stuff here. If you're a Carolina fan, I think you're going to love it. If you're a Runaways fan, I think you're going to love it. I know I loved it. So, Runaways issue 3 gets 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. And that was number 1. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links to my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.